Have you ever felt trapped? I mean, really trapped, in a situation so bleak it feels like there's no way out? What if I told you the world's greatest detective, Sherlock Holmes, once found himself in the most hopeless prison imaginable, a pitch-black, soundproof cellar, and managed to escape using nothing but the power of his mind? This isn't a story from Conan Doyle's books. It's a legendary tale whispered among Holmes enthusiasts, a testament to the incredible potential locked within our own brains. Today, we're going to dive deep into this mystery and uncover how Holmes turned his mind into the ultimate key. The story begins with a brutal blow to the head. When Holmes awakens, he's met with absolute nothingness. No light, no sound, just the damp, cold air of a cellar and the rough texture of a stone floor beneath him. His captors, a cunning criminal syndicate he'd been closing in on, had stripped him of everything: his tools, his coat, even his shoes. They thought they had finally outsmarted him, leaving him to waste away in total sensory deprivation. They made one critical mistake. They left him with his mind. Most people would panic. The darkness would feed their fears. Their minds would conjure terrifying images, and despair would quickly set in. But Sherlock Holmes is not most people. Instead of surrendering to fear, he did something extraordinary. He sat down, controlled his breathing, and began the first step of his escape: observation, but without his eyes. He started by methodically patting the ground around him, creating a mental map of his immediate surroundings. He felt the cold, damp stone, the grit of dirt, and the subtle variations in the floor's surface. He wasn't just feeling, he was gathering data. With a basic layout of his immediate area established, Holmes shifted his focus inward. He knew that, to escape a physical prison, he first had to escape the mental one his captors had designed. He needed to keep his brain sharp, active, and engaged. So, he turned to his most famous mental tool, the mind palace. For those unfamiliar, a mind palace is a memory technique where you visualize a familiar place, like your home, and store information in specific locations within it. You can then mentally walk through this palace to retrieve memories with perfect clarity. Holmes didn't just use his mind palace to recall case files, he used it to live. He mentally walked the familiar streets of London from 221B Baker Street to Scotland Yard. He re-examined clues from past cases, not just as a mental exercise, but to keep his deductive reasoning razor sharp. He visualized the faces of his allies and enemies, replaying conversations and analyzing them for new insights. He even conducted complex chemical experiments in his imaginary laboratory, meticulously going through each step. He wasn't just passing the time. He was actively training his brain, refusing to let the darkness dull his greatest weapon. Days turned into an unknown stretch of time. Without light, his sense of day and night vanished. His only markers were the infrequent moments when a small slot opened and a piece of bread and a cup of water were slid across the floor. These were his lifelines, but also his clocks. He started counting his heartbeats between these deliveries. By calculating the approximate number of beats per minute, he began to reconstruct a sense of time. He estimated how long he'd been there: days, maybe a week. This wasn't just about knowing the date. It was about imposing order on chaos, a crucial step in maintaining sanity. While his mind roamed free in his palace, his body remained a prisoner. But Holmes knew the mind and body are connected. He began a simple but consistent physical regimen. He did push-ups against the cold stone floor, squats in the darkness, and stretched his muscles to prevent them from atrophying. He understood that a weak body leads to a weak mind. He had to be ready for the moment his opportunity came. He couldn't afford to be physically incapable when the time for action arrived. His big break came not from a sound, but from a smell. During one of the food deliveries, he detected a faint, unusual scent mixed with the smell of stale bread, a whiff of linseed oil. It was almost imperceptible, but to Holmes's hyper-trained senses, it was a thunderclap. Linseed oil. Where would that come from? He ran the data through his mental database. Linseed oil is used to treat wood, to make it waterproof and durable. Why would his captors be using it? Suddenly, the pieces clicked together. They weren't just storing him in a random cellar, they were near a dock or a shipyard. The syndicate he was tracking was known for smuggling goods via the River Thames. The oil was likely for treating the wooden planks of a boat or a pier. This single clue re-energized him. He was no longer in an abstract void. He was near the river. Now he had a direction. He shifted his mental exercises. He began to visualize the entire layout of the London docks, mapping out the warehouses, the piers, and the winding alleyways based on his extensive knowledge of the city. He ran through escape scenarios, planning his route as if he were looking at a detailed map. He was preparing for a breakout he couldn't yet see. The final piece of the puzzle came from a change in the air. He noticed a subtle shift in the air pressure and a slight draft that wasn't there before. His captors were getting careless. Lying on the floor, he felt along the walls, searching for the source. And then he found it. A tiny, almost unnoticeable crack near the floor in one corner. The draft was coming from there. He pressed his ear to the stone and listened. For the first time, he heard something other than his own breathing, the distant, rhythmic sloshing of water. It confirmed his theory. He was right next to the river. Now, all his mental preparation was about to pay off. He had a location, a potential exit point, and a body that wasn't weakened by neglect. During the next food delivery, he didn't just take the bread. He waited. He heard the metallic slide of the slot opening, the plate scraping the floor, and then the slide closing. But this time, he timed it perfectly. Just as the outer lock was being secured, he launched himself across the floor using the small metal cup he had saved. He jammed it into the slot before it could fully close. It was a huge risk. If it failed, his captors would know he was trying to escape. But it worked. The slot was wedged open, just a few inches. It wasn't enough to escape, but it was enough to see. A sliver of dim light from a hallway pierced the darkness. It was the first light he'd seen in what felt like an eternity. He peered through the gap. He saw a stone hallway, and more importantly, the guard's boots as he walked away. He studied the locking mechanism from his new vantage point. It was a simple, heavy bolt lock. And then he remembered something, a specific case involving a similar lock. In his mind palace, he revisited the memory, accessing the file on that particular mechanism. He recalled its weakness, a specific pressure point that could dislodge the bolt. He knew what he had to do. He spent the next period of daylight using the edge of his metal plate, scraping away at the mortar around one of the floor stones near the door. It was slow, agonizing work, but his mental discipline kept him focused. His physical regimen gave him the stamina. Finally, he loosened the stone. It was heavy, but he managed to lift it. This stone was his hammer, his crowbar, his everything. He waited for the next delivery. When the guard approached, he stood ready in the darkness, stone in hand. As the slot opened, he didn't go for the guard. He went for the lock. With a powerful, calculated strike, he slammed the stone against the wall exactly where the lock's weak point was. The bolt shuddered, and with a second strike, it broke. The heavy door swung inward. Holmes stepped out, blinking in the dim light of the corridor. He was gaunt, pale, and barefoot, but his eyes burned with an unyielding fire. He was free. The rest of the escape from the warehouse is a story of stealth and cunning, but the true escape had already happened. It happened in the dark, in the silence, inside his own head. This story teaches us something profound. Our minds are not just for thinking, they are for surviving. They are tools we can sharpen, fortify, and use to build our own reality, even when the world around us collapses. Sherlock Holmes didn't have a lockpick or a weapon. He had focus, discipline, and an unshakable belief in his own mental power. He reminds us that the ultimate prison is not a room with four walls, but a mind that has given up. So the next time you feel trapped by a problem, remember Holmes in that cellar. Close your eyes, take a breath, and go to your mind palace. You might be surprised by the keys you find locked inside. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the mind of Sherlock Holmes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories about the power of the human intellect. Until next time.